everybody, Steven Jondra here from GonnaGeek.com and from Better Podcasting. Today, doing a overview and walkthrough of the Zoom L12 digital mixer and recorder. I've been using this for a few weeks now, so I thought let's do a bit of a video here where I can go over some of the features and some of the things that I think you might want to know if you're considering this device. So let's just get into it, and here we go. This is the L12 LiveTrak digital mixer and recorder. So let me start off with a simple overview. You will see that tracks 1 through 8 are all XLR TRS combos. Then tracks 9 and 10 and 11 and 12 are stereo pairs. Now with those, you'll notice there's a couple of USB buttons. That means that you can feed this in digitally through the USB return if you have the right software. So that's kind of cool. This is lit up because that means that right now through my computer, it is substituting tracks 9 and 10 as the playback through USB in from my computer to here. So that's pretty awesome. Then you will see that there is a master output, as well as, look at this, A, B, C, D, and E. That's right. There are 5 different possible mix minuses in addition to the master out. So that means that these are all controllable by these knobs. And if you wanted to, you'll notice there's these corresponding buttons. And that is, I'll explain a little bit more in a minute, but that is how you set what these 5 outputs are getting. Meaning you can, yes, have 5 different mix minuses. These are technically meant for headphone outputs. So if you just have people that are wanting to plug in, yes, they can have their own mix, or this little toggle button on each of these will just turn it over to hearing the master mix. So if you only wanted one mix, but you wanted to use these so that you had different people monitoring, you just got to turn that toggle to master and you are set and everybody's hearing the same mix. Over here, you'll see that there are the gain buttons. There's also pad buttons, and tracks 1 and 2 are meant for high Z components. That's why they have the high Z buttons. You also have the 1 knob compression on this. Now, here's the thing with the 1 knob compression is if you are using the recording capabilities, which I'll talk about in a second, if you're using them, the 1 knob compression records right to the SD card. As well, if you are using the USB input in, it's the same thing. The 1 knob compression actually affects the recording. That's why I have it off, except for this, which I do have that on. And if you want to ask me about that, I'll explain. It's for broadcast purposes. Now, speaking of the recording, we look over here. These are your recording controls. Now, the recording controls themselves, it's pretty straightforward. If I want to go ahead and record, all I got to do is go over here, arm the track that I want to record, or the tracks, come over, hit record, and oh wait, sorry, did I say straightforward? It's not that straightforward. You actually have to hit play. And then as soon as you hit play, you'll see now I am recording. So that's an interesting quirk because I kind of like with like the Zoom H6s and the H5s, you just hit record and away you go after you arm the tracks. There is an important note that I should mention that with the Zoom L12, for some reason, when I turn it off, turn it back on, these recording armings are gone. So with like the Zoom H6, I shut it off. It remembers everything. I don't have to go re-arm the tracks. With the L12, I do have to every time go and arm the proper tracks. So it's just something to remember. If I want to stop, it's as simple as hitting record and I stop. I lied. It's not hitting record. It's stop. Well, why would I hit record? Yeah, obviously. The other thing that you can record is the main mix or not the main mix minus, but the main mix. So I hit that, and now that means that this is going to record everything that is being heard through the stereo master on the main mix. Okay, so now let me show you some of the other features on the Zoom L12. This here is your processing control, because this has built-in EQ as well as effects. The way that you control that is by selecting which track or channel that you want to control. So let's say we wanted to control 7. We hit select, and now I can go and I can set the high or the medium or the low just by that. And that is set for that specific channel. If I want to go over here and change one, I do the same thing, and you'll see that those lights there have reset. So if I just want, I can go and set that over there and so forth. Now I'm going to have to, of course, put them back because otherwise it'll sound terrible. The other options in here as well is, of course, you've got the panning control, so you can pan it, and you can also turn off the EQ. There is a very interesting note that I have. I mentioned that this all has different mixes, and I will get to that funness in a minute. If I go and I set the EQ or the balance on a channel, it is universal across all essentially 6 mixes because it is five headphones outputs plus the master. So it affects all of them. And that's a really important note because if you're planning on maybe panning on one and not on the other, that's not going to happen. It is all or none. Maybe one day they can do a software update. I don't know. I did email them and they said that it is not possible at this time. Now, getting back to the gain inputs, I should note here that I found that I primarily have to go through channels 3 through 8 just because these two are a little too high. Now, if you take a look here with the two different buttons, with the button, the high Z button pressed, it runs from +6 all the way to +50. And then with the high Z button depressed, it goes from +16 to +60. The same thing with the pad. Obviously, there's going to be a difference. With tracks 3 through 8, with the pad button pressed down, it runs from -10 to -34. And with the pad button depressed, it runs from +16 to +60. So that's something that you want to be aware of, that there is quite a bit of gain and that there's no real zero option through any of the channels. So if you're wanting to just set it at 0, that's not going to happen. Speaking of levels, let's get to the fun, the mixer. This took me forever to try to figure out because I'm used to working with analog mixers. Ultimately, what you need to wrap your head around when you're setting this is that these faders do not move. When you can kind of understand that, it makes it a lot easier because let's say that I went and I set on one of my mixes here, I went and I set everything over to 0. And then I went, and so let's say that I did that here. I'll just do that right now. Let's put all of my faders to 0. Now, for those who have used this, know it's actually not setting it right now, and I will get there in a minute. So let's say that I set them all to 0. And now I go back to my master. Well, obviously I don't want these all to be at 0. So what I was getting to was, in order to actually essentially activate the fader, you need to bring it back to the point that it was essentially left at within the specific mix. So in this example, you'll see that with the master on track 1, I had this fader set a little bit below 0. That's what that light is there. Because I went from E to master, it's telling me that this is the start point for the fader. So if I move this right now, this is doing nothing. This is not going to affect the level at all because I haven't brought it back down to this restore point here. Soon as I do that, that light will disappear, indicating I've restored it back to where it belongs. That's the same thing with over here on the 11 and the 12. I left it at essentially infinite minus, so muted, and I go and I bring that all the way down. And now you'll see that light disappeared. That means that I'm now ready to go. So if I do bring that up, I can actually activate it. So now if I go back to E, and then I come back to master, you'll see that right there. That's where I left it. Just to show you again, because obviously I must have had this at 0 on E and master. I'll just bring that all the way down to -20. I'll go to E. So now you'll see it's all the way up here. Let's just go ahead and move that pretty close. Actually, I'll activate it. So there you go. So now I've got this set back to where it belonged for number E. I'll go back to master, and the light is down here where I left it. So again, if If I adjust this here, this is doing nothing until I bring it here and activate the fader. That is the hardest part to wrap your head around, because you just go and you're like, I want to just control a mix. Oh, wait, I need to control E-mix. So I go there and I'm adjusting this and it's not doing anything because I haven't activated it, because I left it at minus infinite. So that is a huge thing. And it sounds simple, but when you start to use it, it just is really confusing because it is all digital. I really actually like that feature once I've started to use this. I've been using this for a few weeks, and it's really nice because I don't really need to worry about if I go and I switch this over to master and I know that this isn't activated and I just happen to bump it and it doesn't matter. It hasn't affected my mix. It only affects it when I go and I actually bring that fader up to the level. So now you see I bring that down there. So since we're talking about levels, let's talk a bit about the mute button. The mute button is neat, but has some quirks. The mute is a universal mute across all 6 mixes. Now, why do I think that's neat? Because I use this for podcasting. So if I want to go and mute myself, I need to make sure that nobody can hear me coughing or hacking or whatever. So I hit mute and I want that to mute to all of my mix minuses. Now, the problem is that it doesn't mute the recording. What is recording to the SD card on this, as well as through the USB to the USB inputs, is pre-fader, so pre these levels here. It is also pre-mute button. If you go and you look at the wiring diagram, it confirms this. So as soon as I hit mute, that means that from the mixer perspective, nothing is hearing me talk except for the recording. So now you're saying to yourself, Steven, I don't understand that. As you're talking right now, I see the levels moving on track 3, which brings me to my next point. Really neat feature. You actually have 2 sets of levels coming through this if you want. What you do in order to set that with this little level meter is you can go into here and you can tell it to show you the lights for the recording levels, and also it will show you the lights for the actual mix level. So you'll see right now as I do this, it is hovering around, I don't know, a -5-ish. As soon as I hit mute, you're going to see that these lights are actually going to be a little bit brighter, which is indicating the actual mix level. So here I go. I'm going to unmute, and now you can see how much brighter that is, and I'm heading up towards a -6. If I go and I bring that way up here, you can see there's the mix right there at a -6. But if I hit mute, you can see it is recording still around this -5 to -0, which is pre-fader. Now, you don't actually have to have that on. If you want, you can go into the menu and you can go into the recording settings and you can go in and you can actually shut that off under the level meter. So now you'll see that as soon as I hit mute, there is no more levels going on track 3 because I turned that recording meter off. And I'm going to leave that off for the rest of the demo. But the big thing to know is that your recording to the SD card and through the USB are pre-fader and pre-mute button, but post-gain. Post-compression and post-gain. So what I mean by that is if I adjust the gain, that will be reflected on the SD card and also through any USB input if I am sending the USB signal from the board into a computer. And same thing goes for the compression. As soon as I turn that up, I'm going to hear that on my SD card recording as well as the USB into my computer. Okay, so there are some other things that I want to talk to you about in regards to the mixes. Now, I already covered a little bit about the faders, so I hope that clarified some things for you. With these, obviously you go in and you select the mix and it tells you which levels all the faders are at and you set them. Well, what happens if I want to make sure that I, by chance, adjust the levels? Can I get them back? Yes, you can, because this board has a recall function. If I want to save my mix exactly as it is, and it is all the mixes, the master through the E button. I just hit save. It's going to blink which presets I have on here. So let's go ahead and set number 3 because you can see these are blinking, indicating I don't have anything programmed right now. I hit save, I hit 3, and now I am set. So you'll see if I hit save again, these are blinking, meaning that I have something stored 1 through 3. All right, so let me just, I think save stops you on that. Okay, so I'll just give you an example of that. So let me just go here on mix A. I'll just take that, I'll drop that down here, take that, bring that up here. This is all set. You'll see there's no lights indicating that this was left on the right level. We'll go reset this down all the way up and then take this and adjust that and go up here and there and just move it all around. So just to show you, I'm going to go back to master, go to A, and show you this is all the levels that I've got set right now. Let me just go ahead and recall that now. Recall 3, that's the one I just set. And what do you know? Look, everything's back where I left it before when I hit save on that demo. How cool is that? And you've got 9 of them. Now, here's the really cool thing. I have kids, and kids like to come in and push buttons and adjust levels and stuff. So if they do that, all I have to do is recall the settings, unless, of course, they overwrite the recall, which then I guess I'm kind of stranded. I just noticed that that's blinking. I don't know why that's blinking. All right, so that's a lot of the functionality of the board. There is a lot more, like you've got a whole bunch of settings in here, but I'm not going to get into too much of those, but there is a whole bunch of options in that. I think I've explained most of the actual functionality of the mixer, as well as like the levels and everything like that. Let's talk a little bit about some of the interesting things that I have found. Now, obviously, I have mentioned that the mute buttons are one quirk. One thing that really, really, really makes that quirky is, I don't know if you caught that, but the mute itself will not affect what is going into the USB. So if I am wanting to use this USB input to, say, go out to streamed or something like that, if I hit mute, yeah, sure, it's muting myself from the mixer, but the people who are hearing it through USB are still hearing because the mute does not mute through USB. This is the really, really, really quirky thing about the USB. The USB sends from here in a full 14 track capacity, which is technically actually less than that because it's 1 through 8 individually. 9 and 10, 11 is 12 is a stereo, and then the mix as well. The like I said, this one over here, you know, the one that you hit record and then it'll do just the general master mix. Yeah, that's also a stereo track. So those will all go via USB, yes, via USB separately into the computer. You got to go in, of course, I only have a Windows machine, so I can only speak to Windows, but you do have to go into the sound card setting and select the proper option. It is in there. Once you've installed the driver, you go into the Windows setting and you got to change it from 2-channel to 14-track. That is an option in there. But most Windows programs that are not meant to do stereo or not meant to do multi-track input, like Skype, like XSplit, for example, they will only do 2 channels. So you think to yourself, yes, okay, that makes sense. Then it's probably just going to take the master, because Steven mentioned that. He said that it'll take in the master. So no, that's not how it works at all. It takes in tracks 1 through 2. So if I don't really have anything on tracks 1 through 2, or, you know, I'm using more than tracks 1 through 2, that kind of makes the USB functionality into the computer kind of pointless. So the way I have to do that is by capturing it through a separate sound card. I take that master out and I route it into a separate sound card so things like XSplit can get that master mix. Maybe one day they'll update the driver. It is a new board, so maybe the driver's just green, but it is a pretty restrictive setup that does mean that I have to use a separate sound card to get that master mix. The inputs into the board, into those channels, are also pretty restrictive through the USB because of the fact that within Windows itself, when I have this set as the default sound card from within Windows, because I want all of my Windows sounds going into here, it's only able to recognize this one here. It's not able to recognize 11 and 12. So that's kind of frustrating. And I wish that they would get better at their driver. I did email them, and it's something that it's just the response. They said that it was vague. Okay. I don't remember the exact wording, but they said that it's a driver limitation. So hopefully someone will pair with them and maybe enhance their driver, the software side of things. That would be kind of nice. And really, that's the biggest downfall that I think that is with the L12, is the fact that the USB is kind of not that great. So it means bringing in another piece of hardware. Yes, it is so functional. You have all of these other options, all of these different mixes, and they're phenomenal. They've been huge. I really do wish, though, that they would improve the USB as well. I would like to see those effects that I mentioned. I'd like to see those be able to be set per mix. If I want to have on say the master, one channel pan to the left, I don't want to have to do that on all of that. I think that it's something that could be done because it is software, and I don't understand why that's the case. As well, I think it would be really, really neat if I could make the mute either applicable for everything, including the recording, or as it is, where it leaves the recording going. But for my purposes, I would like to be able to use it as a cough button, so that if I cough, it's not only muted on the main mix, but also to the recording. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. Lots of functionality, definitely gonna take you a long time to try to wrap your head around the different mixes. It's just one of those things where you got to start playing with that, and then it just makes sense. But I'm pretty happy with it overall. I will say that if you've watched any of the live streams, there is a weird clipping noise that I have occasionally had on here, and I've tried a couple different things. I've tried also splitting that and simultaneously going to my Zoom H6 to confirm that it is only happening on the L12. I won't give you all the details, but I feel confident that it is limited to the L12. I've tried so many different wiring settings that I only have encountered it on the L12. I have an open ticket with Zoom, and they believe it might be my specific unit. So I'll report back on that. I'll make sure to post a follow-up video in the future when I do end up getting it all sorted out, and let you know where I landed. But being that this is a first impressions video and this is a very expensive board, I think that it's my due diligence to mention it to you that that's something that I'm encountering. If you have watched any of the Geeks live streams, you'll hear it. It happens a couple times a show. I am able to fix it in post-production, but it's something that, you can hear it. And I just don't want to harp on it because I'm going to have good faith that it is just the one unit. And hopefully I'll be able to report back that it's all solved. But I just thought I should mention that. So there you go. That's the L12. I am really enjoying it. Lots of great functionalities. Yes, some quirks. If you have any other questions, please do let me know. I think that if you're going to set up the board, I would highly encourage you to go in and enable that recording level meter, because that's going to help you as soon as you do that and you enable that. That's going to help you set your levels as far as how they're going to be on your SD card. That's a common question that I've seen asked, is people saying, well, it just doesn't seem to line up. And if you go in and you turn on the recording level meter and you go in and you mute like I've done here, now I know like this level that I'm seeing is what's going to be on my SD card. So that's a huge tip that I can give you. And also just play with the different channels and the different mixers or the different mixes until you really can wrap your head around this whole fader thing, because it is a very different perspective. So there you go. That's going to wrap up the Zoom L12 walkthrough and first impressions. I hope that helped you and maybe gave a little bit of insight into the L12 that answered some of your questions. I will tell you this, that I will absolutely respond once I end up getting information and get the unit back and can talk about whether or not the warranty problem did fix that clipping thing that I mentioned. I've talked to a couple people who said they haven't encountered this, so that is a really good sign, but I will absolutely report back once I get the L12 back. If you have any questions, please ask me. I'm happy to answer them. I might have to wait till I get the unit back to go over that, but I will absolutely answer whatever I can. If you did like this video and you like other gear stuff, please do subscribe to the channel. We always are trying to post gear videos and whatnot. We know there's a lot of people who like gear talk and gear videos, so please do subscribe. All right, so that's it. And again, I look forward to hearing from you if you have any questions, and I hope this helped. Bye.